Mayor, we are live.
Thank you. Just waiting for Councilmember Avila to return. All right. So today is June 15th, 2022, and the time is 5:16 p.m. And I'm calling to order the Baldwin Park City Council special meeting. City Clerk, can I have a roll call?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Paul Hernandez.
And I believe Councilmember Hernandez and Mayor Pro Tem Damian will be joining us a little later.
Okay. Councilmember Monica Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Alejandra Avila. Mayor Pro Tem Daniel Damian will be later, and Mayor Emmanuel Estrada.
Here. Thank you for that, City Clerk. At this moment, I will move to open public communication. City Clerk, is there anybody looking to speak?
We did not receive any in writing requests.
Okay. If anybody is looking to speak that didn't fill out a writing request, now is your time.
Greg Tuttle, business owner. This is on the budget, and I'm looking at Transparent California, which shows all the wages for the 2021 for the employees. And we have the highest paid director is the highest paid out of the whole city employees for right now because the city manager and police chief didn't get full year in. We're paying her $277,000. What I don't understand, and these other cities don't have this, is called other pay. She gets $60,623 of other pay. I don't understand what other pay is. She gets her regular pay at $179,500 and benefits at $35,916 and pension debit at $1,095. If we continue to keep overpaying people that aren't qualified, doesn't have CPA license, has cooked the books with the Lozano Group, has still can't explain where all the weed money went to for what the weed people came in and paid for the police department, specifically to go to the police department, disappeared into the general fund, and then all the application money that went into the general fund that kind of like disappeared, but it didn't disappear. It paid the bills that is owed by the city. And we aren't making our budget because we have the direction is wrong with the finance, and it needs to be straightened out. And if we keep continuing like this is what's going to happen. And you increase the sales tax, this is what's going to happen also. When you go and increase the sales tax, all that money's going in the general fund. We have no control on it. We don't know where it's going to go. But we know from past history in this city, not this council included, where it went before. And we need to stop this. And we need to understand that you need to work within your budget. And with the weed monies and stuff coming in and the newer companies within this year, you should have a good income coming in. But we need to stop the bleeding here and stop bleeding of overpaying some of these people here that aren't qualified and re-look at all the way that you're paying all these employees that aren't qualified and certified to be doing the job. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else? If not, I will move to close public communication. And I believe at this time we do have our fiscal year 2022-2023 proposed budget. So, Rose, go ahead.
evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council and residents of the City of Baldwin Park and the community. My name is Rose Tam. I am the Director of Finance for the City of Baldwin Park. I'm going to present you the proposed fiscal year 2022-23 budget. Next slide, please. The main emphasis and theme for the fiscal year 22-23 is to continue proactive planning and fiscal responsibility. Next slide, please. And last, on June 1st, during the study session, I have presented the projected fiscal year 22-23 budget to the City Council. And with City Council's direction, the E-team worked together to reduce the non-urgent and non-critical expenditure. We are happy to bring you back the proposed budget, the surplus of $77,490 surplus. And since I have presented all the detail and line item information in the last study session, and unless the City Council wants me to go, want me to go all over them again, and I would. Otherwise, this is the summary page to show the general fund summary, the proposed revenue and proposed expenditures. And otherwise, we are going to leave more time to discuss the personnel requests from all the departments. I will take the City Council's direction if you want me to go over all the slides again, or we are going to proceed to the personnel requests. Please.
You can proceed to the requests.
Thank you, Mayor. May I have the personnel request list up, please? We have prepared a list of the personnel request items from all the departments based on the operational need, and the estimated cost of all personnel requests to the general fund would be about $350,000. For the special revenue and other funds, it would be about $373,000. And the total estimate cost will be about $722,000. However, if we approve all requests, including unfreeze the 7 police officers and also approve all 4 requests for the community service officers, the total estimate cost to the general fund would be $1.9 million, and to the special revenue and other funds would be about $469,000, which will bring the total estimate cost for about $2.35 million. This is the summaries of the total requests. And I'm going to show each department's request, and the City Council would have a chance, and also the directors would have a chance to answer any questions you may have. Next slide, please. For the police department slide, please. This slide shows currently we have 7 police officers frozen. And also the police department originally proposed to add 4 community service officers to the coming fiscal year's budget. After further discussion with the police chief and the E-team, and since currently we have about 15 vacancies, and we decided to hold on and not to unfreeze those 7 police officers at this time. We are going to see during the mid-year, see if at that time we are able to fill all the 15 vacancies. And also we decided to hire 1 community service officers at this time. That's the police department's request for the fiscal year 22-23. And if City Council have any question, and I believe Chief will be able to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question. Chief, what exactly will the community service officer do?
Sorry, apologize for that. Councilmember, it would be to augment our patrol services so that they would actually be able to respond to report calls, so that it minimize the amount of work that the patrol officers would have to do, so that they could actually provide extra, improve a little bit of response time. It won't be a lot of response time, but it'll improve some of it, and it'll allow them to have some proactive patrol.
What kind of calls would they be responding to?
Just report calls that don't have any suspect at scene. They would take grand theft auto reports, theft reports, those type of reports that are time consuming for the patrol officers to handle. They would be doing that instead.
So I know at one point, or maybe I don't remember correctly, I remember hearing they would be covering domestic violence. So that would not be a good idea, I don't think.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
They would not be covering the domestic violence calls, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I recall at one time, or maybe I heard wrong, I heard they were going to be covering those type of calls, but no.
No, because that again is a special type of call, and at times you might have a suspect at scene.
Right.
So that would be the concern that you have a civilian at a scene where a suspect could possibly be there or could return, and I wouldn't want to have that safety issue.
And what are the qualifications for a community service officer? You said they're civilians, but what kind of qualifications do they need?
I'm going to draw a blank because I've left that on my desk. But generally, it's maybe I can defer to Captain Hofford. He's had to deal with the community service officers in the past.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for. Should I hold it? In terms of the hard job qualifications, these are positions intended for adults, so they need to be a high school graduate or equivalent. It doesn't require a college degree. It's a full-time position, so it'd have to be somebody who's willing to work full-time on around-the-clock schedule. In the past, we've had 2 CSOs that worked in the field, and they're also subject to working evenings and weekends as well.
And what kind of training do they receive? so they can know how to deal with the public, because that's very important that they know how to speak to the public. Even though we might think an auto theft or a robbery, it may not be a big deal because it doesn't require the criminal or whatever you want to call them to be there. They're not going to be there. Nevertheless, I feel this community service officers need to have great people skills, know how to deal with community, because people will be distressed on calls like this. So what kind of training will they have, and how will you provide that training?
They'll ride with a field training officer, and that officer will teach them how to investigate crimes and how to properly document the crimes and how to interact with people.
Okay. And you said we will have one person on board. What would the schedules look like? Since, I mean, we're 7 days a week.
I'd want to take a look at our busiest days, to see what our busiest days are for report calls, that nature, so that we could actually impact that process or impact our patrol calls for service.
On an average, what percentage do you think of the calls are this type of calls where the officers are just taking reports?
That really varies by weekday and time of day, council member. Most typically, report calls are most common during the weekdays and business hours. This is when people return to work and find that it's been broken into, or they wake up and find that their car's been stolen. Evening shifts tend to have more disturbance type calls. So we would prioritize this CSO working during the time that the most report calls are coming in.
So they will be going out, taking the report, and coming back and completing the report, correct?
Yes.
Because I know that's very time consuming for our officers.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're asking us at this time, because of the budget issues, to keep these police officers frozen and then to add one community service officer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then which one, because I see the justification provided by the department, that section. Does it matter which one? Are you focused on anyone in particular?
I'm sorry, ma'am. I have trouble hearing you. What did you say?
Oh, I'm sorry. I see here that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 CSO positions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then on the right where it says justification provided by the department, there are 4 kind of focus areas. If you ask me, is there one in particular that you would like us to, in addition to approving one of these positions, would it be for service non-emergency calls?
Yes, ma'am. It would be those two that would help us again with our report calls. The sheer amount that we handled during the week, especially when you have people that come back from weekend off and then their house may be burglarized or their vehicle may be tampered with. Those are the report calls that are time consuming. And so I would look to have for them to handle the non-emergency calls, report calls.
Mm-hmm. And what would that look like when somebody calls the main police line, which I think that's 960-4011, or what is the number, 1955?
They would call dispatch, and then they would be dispatched by our dispatchers, so they could handle the calls. Plus, also it accounts for accounting for their activity during the day.
I see. Okay, so a resident could call dispatch, and then dispatch would contact one of the CSOs during these specific hours, and that's when the CSO would go out and field those calls.
Yes, ma'am. And they would generally be out in the field. Again, there's other ancillary duties that they could do as well, but we'd evaluate what their response would be, and determine if they could handle additional ancillary duties like parking citations, because there's a variety of things that they can do based on the qualifications that we're looking for. So there's a lot of things that we could look at, but I would like to focus it generally on our report writing calls that take quite a bit of time to document, and then then once you submit it, then you have to come in and submit it and have it approved. So there's a lot of time-consuming pieces with that. So that would be the things that I would look for.
Okay. And you're asking for us to approve one or two of the 4 positions today?
At this point, I'm looking for, just for the one.
One.
I want to make sure that I support the rest of the city with the request for personnel, and I realize that we're all struggling, so that the one would help me at least start the process. So that as we continue to look forward and into that process, I have somebody that's already trained and could again be a mentor to the other CSOs that we would eventually hire. Again, you're looking at the redaction piece for all our videos. We have both body-worn video and digital in-car video that we'll have to redact for the DA's office and also for Public Record Act requests. And then also our Evidence Bureau. We, right now we were using a police officer who was on light duty. He is out waiting for surgery, so that, again, it's only leaving either a cadet or our evidence tech to do what she has to do, and we do have quite a bit of evidence that we need to purge and also document and prepare for court. So there's a lot of moving parts that I've taken a look at over the period to see where I could use civilians as opposed to officers, so that it helped ease and make sure that we have officers out in the field.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to ask. So this would be to support having more officers responding to the emergency calls, or even some of the incidents that we've had involving gang violence and things like that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any more questions? So if this one position request is approved, and it will be about $97,000 added to the proposed budget that I just presented. Next slide, please. This request is from IT. And IT requests to have an information system support technician. And if this position is approved, it will be a reduction from the consultant's cost for $96,000, so which will bring to the net estimate cost of $3,823. And the chief and Mark can further explain to you why they propose to have this position. Also, they request to have a reclassification for the current information system technician to be the analyst. And the net cost for this reclassification is $5,398. So the total net estimate cost for these 2 requests from IT is $9,221 additional to the proposed general fund budget. And if City Council have any questions, and they are ready to answer you.
Does council have any questions?
No question, right? Okay, next page, please. This request is from the HR division. They requested to have an administrative clerk 2 and for part-time at this point. And we will revisit the situation during the mid-year. And also they request to unfreeze the HR technician position, and which bring to a total estimate cost to the general fund in the amount of $54,000 and to the other funds for $54,000 also. So together, the estimated total cost is $109,000. And the HR manager, Lola, is here ready to answer any question you may have. Any questions from the City Council? If no, then I go to the next slide. Okay, the next one. Next, please. Thank you. This slide is the request from the city clerk's office. They request a full-time administrative clerk too, and the estimate cost to the general fund is about $64,000, and for the special revenue funds and other funds, it would cost about $7,000 for this position. Any questions for this request? If no, we are going to go to the next slide. This slide is a request from Finance Department, and we propose to recast our current finance clerk position to the management assistant. And it is the reason we request to recast this position because the individual has been working for the city for almost 4 years, and this individual has been performing the duty reflects what in this position and is vital to the department's need. And at the same time, I put it in the budget to freeze the current 2 finance intern position, which would bring savings to the city. So by taking all those steps, and we bring about $23,000 total saving to the proposed budget, not adding additional costs to the proposed budget. Any question on this request?
So you will be eliminating the 2 interns,
Yes.
reclassifying this person because you're eliminating the 2 interns and the finance clerk one, which would actually be.
Actually, if this is approved, we will eliminate the current finance clerk position and also freeze the 2 finance intern position. That's why it brings a big savings to the for the city, and it doesn't cost additional to the city. Thank you. Any more questions? If no, we go to the next slide. This one is from the Community Development Department. They request for a part-time intern position, and because of the urgent need for the Community Development Department due to the city planner vacant position, and the city planner currently working as an acting director for the community development. So, and they have the urgent need to have this part-time intern position. And the position, the total cost to the general fund is about $12,000. And to other special revenue fund is about $5,000. And is already included in the current budget, the 21-22, because of the emergency need, but we still want to show it to the city council. And they also request for a housing financial analyst part-time position. And this position would cost the housing fund for about $35,000. Any questions regarding this request?
Yeah, I do have a question, Rose. So in this particular case, the intern part-time would be to handle the planning because of our planner now being our interim community development director. The second position would be a new position for housing financial analyst part-time. Specialized grant funding and reporting. Who's actually doing that now?
Right now, a big portion of the financial related tasks are currently done by a couple of staff in the finance department, and they charge small portion to the housing funds. For example, about 3% or 2%, and our accountant, Ron, who's present here also, and he's the main person handling most of the financial related tasks and transactions. And according to the information I get from Ron and Carol, and this new requested position is going to handle lots of reporting and programming area. But they are both here. They can further answer your questions.
No, that's fine. You can move on. Thank you, Rose.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Any more questions? If no, I go to the next slide. The next one is from Public Works. And Public Works requests 3 maintenance worker 1 position. They also request for a Public Works supervisor position. And if the Public Works supervisor position is approved, they are going to remove the senior maintenance worker and to reduce costs and to compensate some of the costs for the supervisor position. They also request for a management analyst position. And the Public Works Director, Sam, is here, and he will be able to answer any questions you may have. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on this one. The third maintenance worker, street landscape, didn't we contract for landscaping services last year? Why is it that we're adding more to landscape? And then the second one is the Public Works Supervisor. When this position was eliminated, I was concerned as to why we were getting rid of a supervisor when we had 2 supervisors. And it was said that it was best for us, cost savings wise, and best for us to have 1 public works manager versus the 2 supervisors. So why is it now that we're bringing in a supervisor? Did it not work out, or what's the situation with this position?
Yes, I can speak to that, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for your questions. So to the first question, this street landscape position will supplement the street landscape crew that are now assigned to other locations other than the contracted locations that you mentioned. So that contract only addresses routine maintenance along certain corridors. This landscape is a more detailed position that will supplement landscaping along corridors that are not part of that contract. And so to answer your second question is yes, we did a restructure a few years ago, I think 2 years ago, and in which we eliminated the supervisor position. That was because of the sign of the times in the budget, but that was not ideal. Having done that has left a layer open, which is really needed between what the manager does and what the leads are doing. So we need that liaison between that. So this position will support the manager in addressing a lot of the field operations.
Got it. Thank you.
Any more questions? If no, we can move to next slide. This one is a request from Recreation and Community Department, and they request to recast the Senior Center Program Coordinator to Program Supervisor. The total estimate cost to the general fund is $8,000. Manny is here, who's the director for the Community and Recreation Services. Is here to answer any questions you may have. Any questions? If no, this will conclude the personnel requests from all the city departments and divisions.
Mayor, I have a question for Rose.
Let's go ahead.
Rose, so as you presented earlier today, we went from a proposed deficit to now having a surplus of 77,000. And when I look at these requests, you know, obviously they exceed 77,000. So, I mean, how are we, I know that there are priorities, but for me, I think police would be the highest priority. But the question that I have is, even at that level, I think it was like a $97,000 price tag. That still exceeds what's proposed. So then we would be looking at deficit once again. So, I mean, that's a concern, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be a little bit more? Why? I guess, would it be better if we just held off on these requests until we have better projections for this coming fiscal year?
Rose, was your presentation going to include how we propose to offset the additional cost?
The proposed general fund budget now presents a 77,000 surplus, not include all those personnel requests.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's my concern is, yes, when I look at all of the requests, then absolutely I see the need and I would want to approve all of them and more. But the question is, do we have the funding for it? And it appears that the answer to that is no, not at this time. So I guess the city council, we need to consider that. And if additional revenues do come in than what is already projected, then we can take up some of these requests. But otherwise, we're essentially tapping into our savings account, it sounds like, or just hoping that, we'll bring in more revenues than projected. But is that realistic? And I don't know the answer to that.
And then just to piggyback off you, Councilmember Garcia, this is not even including the part-time and full-time restructure, which would add an additional $425,710 on top of these personnel reclassification requests. And then also, obviously, this is projected revenue, but as Councilmember Garcia stated, do we have any other possibilities of revenue coming in that we're not accounting for here? And if so, do we have a ballpark figure or estimates?
Mayor, may I?
Yes. Councilmember Avila.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Damian, were you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I just want to refer back to, and I'm in agreement with Councilmember Garcia and Mayor Pro Tem Damian. Right now, we are not in a deficit, but $77,000 is not very much money to consider. And I also agree that all these departments need the personnel to better function. But we don't have the money coming in. And even if we were to sit here and project, we may be having this much coming in. As the saying goes, we shouldn't count our chickens before they hatch. So we shouldn't be spending money that is not actually in our budget yet. I would love to get all these positions up to par and everybody has the right staffing. But I just think at this point, it's nearly impossible to add any more expenses to our budget. In my opinion, we need to wait and see maybe what midterm budget will do for us to see where we can make some changes and add some more employees or more hours to the departments as needed. But I just don't see going back and bringing the budget to a negative to add all these necessary positions, of course. But I just feel we need to wait and see what the future brings to us a midterm and take it from there. That's my take on what the budget looks like right now. I don't want to go into a new budget with a negative. I do want to accommodate eventually all the requests, but I don't think this is the time to accommodate these requests.
Rose, when you set up your budget, did you budget in a full-on permanent director of community development?
Yes,
At what step did you
it's
do it?
in the budget.
What did you budget at? What step do you know?
I have to go back to take a look. I believe it's at step 1.
Okay. So I think the most important part is to get our director, a permanent director, and then maybe, I don't know if we can maybe do like a halfway through this, or through these, before we get to the second quarter of this fiscal year, we can kind of see where we're at and go from there. But maybe we still need to prioritize getting a director. So that's something to keep in mind.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Garcia.
I just want to say that this budget document is actually really our priorities, right, at the council level. And yes, our finance director, Rose, she does a wonderful job of putting the budget together for us and making sure that everything is tracked at the city level. But at the end of the day, this document it's an agenda setting document. And it's how we at the council level mostly prioritize and allocate resources in the city. So I just want to share that because I think I heard some community members not really quite understanding, the finance director's role. The finance director doesn't go around the city identifying priorities. That's what we do at the council level. Second, Rose, I have a question with regard to any of these requests, these personnel requests. Can you tell me which of these requests would be funded through restricted funding sources so that they would be specific to that department?
Okay.
And if they are restricted, then do we have the funding for those positions? If it's restricted.
Actually, is not restricted. The requests that we have from all departments, they are from special revenue funds and internal revenue funds. And I can go over them very quickly with the city council. For example, the request from the IT is from the Internal Revenue Service Fund for the information systems, and which this fund are contributed from all other funds since they are handling the citywide IT. And for this one, it will not cost the general fund, and kind of indirectly impact the general fund a little bit. But let's say if we prove those two positions that they are not two positions, actually one position, since one is a reclassification. So the cost to internal fund will be about $9,200. And as the chief and Mark has mentioned, and the request for the information support technician will be very effective for the police department and the IT, and for this specific request. And since currently we are paying $96,000 to the contracted individual to handle the police IT, and with that position filled, it will cost about $3,800 to the internal service fund. And the reclassification for the current IT technician to analyst will cost about $5,300 to the internal service fund. And if you approve this for this coming fiscal year, it's not going to impact the general fund in 2022 and 23.
So it wouldn't impact the surplus of 77 or projected surplus of 77,000.
No, it will stay the same.
And we would have the funding for these positions.
And it will bring a little bit increase to the internal service fund, which will be shared from all other cities' funds, including general funds and all other special revenue funds. And since they are $9,000, $200 only, it will be a very small impact to all those funds, maybe a few dollars here and there.
Mm-hmm. And what about any other departments like Public Works? That was a larger number that they were proposing or that they were requesting.
The Public Works requests, they are all using special revenue funds at this time. So in the current fiscal year, all the future years, it won't really have impact to the general fund until long term later on. only if these new positions maintain in the city and retire from the city, then it might have some future impacts to the general fund.
So, with the special, I'm sorry, Councilmember Garcia.
Oh, go ahead.
So Rose, with the special revenue funds, even though currently it will not affect the general fund, in the future, the city is still liable for the retirement for CalPERS, correct?
Yes.
And then second of all, even though it's not coming out of the general fund, could that money in that special revenue funds be used for either street repairs or capital improvement projects?
Sam can further respond on this. I can chime in also after Sam respond to you. He is more familiar with all these special revenue funds he allocated to fund this position.
Yes, thank you. Danny, I just want to make sure that I understand your question. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, so the special revenue funds that you're proposing to cover these salaries, would the money that's in that account that you're proposing to cover for these salaries also be used for street repairs or for any type of capital improvement projects?
Yes, absolutely. So it is eligible to be used in that manner. So what we're doing here is that right now the funding is used as what we call professional services or contract services that we go throughout the year and use them as as needed and goes along. So right now it is going towards those types of activities. So what we're doing is we're consolidating those and not having to go out for certain professional services or contract services, and using that money to hire in-house staff.
So that money is only being used by your department for contract services or professional services, not for any type of street repairs or capital improvement projects.
Right. So the vast majority of it, that's correct, is being used sporadically for those types of services that are needed and offset to support our operations. However, they can be used during budgeting season if we decide to. They can be used for street repair services and those other types of services.
Got it. That's what I want to clarify. Thank you.
Mayor, I wanted to make a comment about the goodwill and the sense of responsibility that all the departments feel for the fiscal well-being of the city. In the study session, you may recall we had a projected deficit of $147,000 only as a projected deficit for purposes of the discussion during the study session. But since then, and on your direction, we went back and sharpened the pencil. Every one of the departments stepped forward with ways in which they could eliminate costs, bring efficiencies, some even more than what they had on their own, to eliminate the deficit. So while you're seeing a surplus here today of $70-some thousand, that's thanks to the efforts of each of the department heads. And as you consider the request granted, it's not pocket change, it's $700,000. Perhaps one way that you could contemplate is if you leave them in the parking lot, as we have come to call it, and then authorize us to bring forward subsequent substantiation of how we can make those positions pencil out. Because I do believe that the department heads, as you have known them, have the best interest, not just of their departments, but of the city at heart. And, there's no question that every one of the departments is trying to do better. On Public Works, as an example, we have very limited in-house capacity to be able to do some of the work that at some point pencils out to be done best in-house at some point. But we got to develop the expertise. You know, some of the folks in Public Works have an incredible desire to do more than what they already do, and some do. Same true in Manny's organization. Some of the folks there do technical work that, my goodness, we know we can grow our in-house capacity that in the end will prove to be better financially for the city. But we gotta increase their capabilities. So these requests are very modest, but it's a step in that direction that in the end will be of benefit of the city.
I'd like to, and again, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was not muted. But I agree that it would be good to have these requests perhaps come back to us with a plan of how they can be sustained this year and in the future. I mean, you know, the future, we would hope that there will be revenue streams that we don't even have today. But if we can look even like the next 2 to 3 years or something, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want us to just create positions and then have one-time funding sources behind them, right? Because we know that that leads to problems down the road. We're just kicking the problem down the road and could lead to layoffs in the future and things like that. So it would be nice to see this list come back with some plan of how it could be funded sustainably.
Mayor, if I may.
I just want to respond to the City Council's question little while ago for the steps that we put it in the proposed budget for the Community Development Director. We currently we budgeted as step 2.
I think Councilmember Hernandez had a question.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Apologize for showing up late. The 210 freeway is never helpful during this time. Rose, and this is more for my colleagues. You know, I, again, as Councilmember Garcia mentioned, that this is a priority, you know, for the City Council and for the mayor. You know, I absolutely, certainly want to request that we at least fund the one community service officer for the last 6 months of the fiscal year. I certainly believe, and I think each and every one of you understand that right now the police department is under pressure and understaffed and overworked. There's no question about that. But what this young individual will do, or he or she, whoever that might be, what they're going to do is help alleviate some of those community concerns. The interactions of the non-911 calls, right? These are things that, you know, our community have asked us in the past to look at of, you know, when they're talking about, you know, de-escalation or even defunding the police department, which is not something that we're looking to discuss today, but it is an option, an alternative where instead of an individual or an armed officer is going and going to, you know, speaking on something that's non-critical, we can have a civilian, someone that obviously is trained to be able to do some of these investigations and help alleviate some of these concerns, especially now as we're moving out of hopefully this, you know, endemic as from the pandemic. That is a service that I think will enhance our city, especially as, you know, I know Mayor Pro Tem Damian had mentioned about the fireworks. This is you know, had this person be around, this is something that this individual or position would be able to go around and investigate, right? If we're talking about actually, you know, doing the work that we want to be doing, this helps in and around, at least on the law enforcement and community advocacy part. This also helps, I believe, in my perspective, that help support the mission and, more importantly, the vision that our chief has for our community and also for our residents. Already we've already taken on the responsibilities and the roles of policing the school departments. So this is another way of helping some of that work in that capacity. So I would ask, for us to consider at least funding that position for part-time, and then the other positions that are frozen right now, we can discuss that, in mid-year and come January or February if we see the budget, changing in the positive for all of us. Rose, just out of curiosity, what would that 6-month salary cost for the community service officer be?
The 6 months, if it's part-time, then it will be a substantial saving. It will be, the estimate cost will be about $24,000 without benefit, or maybe 25,600 with taxes and insurance.
Got it.
If it's for part-time.
And for full-time?
For full-time, the estimate cost is $92,000.
No, I'm sorry. 6 months of the full-time.
6 months of full-time
Yep.
will be about 56,000. I'm sorry, 46,000.
46,000. Okay. Thank you. I'm asking the council to reconsider to add that one position for the police department to prepare as we move forward here, and more importantly, get the position in place and ready to hire come January. Now, if we wish to discuss doing a part-time of the part-time, we can look at that. But at first, I would certainly ask that we do at least fund it for 6 months to help the police department, and more importantly, help our residents with the calls that they're coming in with loud music, illegal fireworks, nuisance issues, and so forth, so we can prevent some of these issues from bubbling up and perhaps lessen the impacts that our police department is having right now with all the calls that they're doing. So that would be my request, and certainly open for any conversation around that. Thank you.
May I ask a question? Since you mentioned about July 4 and fireworks, since July is coming up, you propose to have this position for 6 months part-time first, then by January, that have that position for full-time for 6 months?
I like where you're thinking.
I just want to clarify, since you are
I
talking about.
I do like that. I'm going to go with that, but we'll certainly allow my colleagues to discuss as to what works best for all of us. But thank you. So that's one option, as our directors mentioned.
Rose, is there any special funds to use for that? Community service officer?
For the police department, and they funded by general fund, and also the police department also contribute from the cannabis safety fee that we collected in the past, and we estimate there will be about 1.4 million coming in for the cannabis safety fees. And we allocated 75% of that to fund different programs and to support the police also. So a big portion of that already allocated to the police department. They don't normally fund it by special revenue funds.
Thank you, Rose.
Just out of curiosity, how much money do we receive off the fireworks sale for this particular year? What are we projecting?
I have to double check for that. Normally, we don't get money from fireworks sales.
Just the license, right? The
Yes.
permit,
Yes.
which is de minimis.
Yeah.
But the good news is that the vendors for their nonprofits.
Yeah. I just wanted to see if that was another mechanism in which we could use some of those fees to help offset the cost of this one position. Because currently, right now, as I see it, we do have the budget as proposed right now as we're talking about it. But it's a matter of the will of us as a council whether we want to fund that one part-time 6-month position or is really what I'm asking for the rest of the year for $56,000.
However, I think I have some ideas, but I need to double check, verify with the chief. I am thinking with the discussion and conversation we have, and based on what all you're talking about, I think this position will reduce overtime a lot, correct, Chief? If we are going to reduce overtime with adding of this position, and that might be balanced out for the cost of hiring this position, or at least for 6 months part-time at the beginning, because for the part-time, it will cost about $25,000 or $30,000. And I believe based on the numbers I'm running in my head, and it looks like if it reduces overtime of the police officers, and I think that can be compensated. Do you agree with me, Chief?
It could impact. It could save, do some cost saving, but it's not a huge amount. But again, holding over officers to complete reports due to the calls for service that we're running back and forth to, and then they're coming in at end of watch and completing the reports. That does take some time. So we would say there would be some savings. I just don't know if it would be what it would be.
Do we want to test it out for 6 months and have it at full-time, part-time for now? Or since we are going to wait until January to have it full-time for 6 months?
Well, not only that, Chief, I would also suggest that also looking at, and again, this would be contingent to having the funding available first and foremost, right? We don't want to run into a deficit. But given what Rose has said and what the chief is perhaps projecting is contingent that we have the funding available through these cost savings in this first 6 months between July 1st and December, really November, because that's when they're going to need to do that. Plus any increase in the confiscation account. I forgot what it's called. The impound?
You mean asset forfeiture?
Asset forfeiture. That could also help with the minimal funding needed for this position from January 1st of 2023 through June 30th. Would that be accurate?
I'd have to confirm that we could pay salaries from asset forfeiture, but which I don't think we can. Is more for equipment.
Yeah. However, Chief, like you said,
more on the salaries, right? We're basically swapping out one money for another money, right? If that asset forfeiture pays for certain equipment, then that's generally money that we would normally use from our general fund to pay. Rose, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Which then would alleviate and then use the general fund for this position. So that's what I'm suggesting.
We are thinking the same.
I have a question also.
Oh, please.
May I?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very good information. Very good questions. I also have a question maybe for Enrique. If maybe we can look into this. I agree, policing, our police department is in high need, especially all the incidents that have been happening lately, and knowing that we're short on officers, knowing that they're working 24 hours, it's a safety issue. And I agree, we definitely need a lot of police officers, not a lot, at least the minimum, to make sure that everybody's safe and that they're doing their job in the right mind. And that goes for all the departments. All the departments need the right staffing because we don't want to overwork our staff. But we're talking about the police department and the safety issues and how how we need more people out there to free our officers to go into those calls. So if I can have Enrique look into, I know ARPA is restricted, but if there's any way we can look into using those funds, I know it's earmarked in a certain way, and it's the way we word it on how we use the funds. If you can look into that to see what we can do and what monies we can come up with so we can help this particular issue. Also, I know there are about 5 development agreements that are ready, and it's a sure deal that is not on your budget right now for the billboards that are coming up. If we can look into that amount of money to see how much money is coming in from there, because I know it's a sure thing, and maybe use that money to help fund some of these projects and some of these positions like the police department, and the most urgent, because I do believe community development is urgent, because Ron is doing 2.5 jobs out there. So not just Ron, everybody, but the police department is definitely priority. So Enrique, if you can look into those 2 areas and the funding, see how we can word it, maybe with ARPA, or how much money is actually coming in from those 5 development agreements, so we can fund maybe for the 6 months, like you said, Councilmember Hernandez, and then move from there, because mid-year we're going to have a better idea of the way our budget's going to look. Hopefully we have all those development agreements with cannabis ready to go and everything figured out, and so we can get a better idea of what the funding will look like for the rest of the year. So if you could do that.
We will, absolutely. And that also, we will have bird on hand, if you will, with regards to being able to substantiate, not project, but substantiate what the revenue is at that point.
Look at the need in each department, and hopefully we can accommodate just one need in the departments that are asking and requesting. Again, all the departments, I want you to know that we know that you need your staff. We know you have been short-staffed since the pandemic started. So we need to make sure that we are financially stable for the city. At the same time, we need to make sure that you guys are set in your departments with the right amount of employees and working with you to make sure that the tasks get completed, that our police department has the staff that they need. But slowly but surely, I just don't believe that at this time we can accommodate all those requests, because it will add up. As Councilmember Damian says, we haven't even looked into the wages, which is $425,000 that need to be adjusted. There's just so much adjusting to do that we need to make sure that we're planning for the future and not start on a negative page here.
So since we are talking about the first department on this list, for police department, do I have any specific direction at this time, or we come back to revisit it? And after we look at the billboard, I want to add comments to Paul's suggestion about the asset forfeiture fund. If you all think that is an urgent need for the police department, and Councilman Paul's suggestion might work, because I remember there are still some available fund balance in the asset forfeiture funds that we can use that to replace certain line item for the equipments, then use the general fund of those equipments to fund this community officer position. That could work if you want to direct us to do that.
Thank you, Rose. So here's my suggestion for my colleagues, and I appreciate that. One is, this position is, again, contingent that we have available funding that we could ID, over the next 2 weeks, right? So we can give the authority to the chief to hire, come January, but to really give him the sense that he can start advertising for the position and so forth. So that is contingent based on either available funding through the account you just mentioned, freeing up other special funds that we have available within the police department's budget. I'm not talking about others, to see if that's available, and or as Councilmember Avila just mentioned, if there's other additional special funds or ARPA funds that can be swapped out just for this 6 month of position from January 1st through July. That would be my suggestion for my colleagues, is for us to approve it contingent that staff can provide us a memo and an outline that outlines where this money is going to be coming from. And then if there's any suggestions or changes that we have to make to that, we can do so. But just to, at least at this very point, for that one community service position to move forward in that direction. And then we'll come back for all the rest of the other departments, as Councilmember Avila has mentioned, for the other special funds in the other departments, and so forth. That would be my recommendation to my colleagues.
So I have a question. The spreadsheet that was sent to us that has the personnel request and the reclassification request lets us know, what percentage is coming out of special revenue funds and what percentage is coming out of the general fund. So I don't think we have to go back to verify where the funds are coming from. They're outlined on the spreadsheet. I guess the point is that we're going to have to, what is it we're doing here? Are we parking everything? Are we going to go down department by department and pick and choose what we're going to go through and what we're not? Because listen, all of these personnel requests are justifiable, right? We need more better services. In order for us to provide that, we need to have more staff. The issue here is, where are we going to get the money to pay for this? So we really have to focus on, are we going to pass just one or two? Are we going to pick and choose? What is it that we're going to do?
If you're asking me, that would be, for now, it would just be that one position, the community service officer. I think Councilmember Avila certainly provided another roadmap of additional development agreements that are coming through. For now, what I would suggest is that in 3 months, we bring back those other departments' requests and look at where we stand, in the next quarter here, to see how we can look at funding the rest of the positions and then prioritizing what we all believe are necessary moving forward. And as you mentioned, Mayor Pro Temp, is also being aware of the associated costs, right? Those are the pension costs and so forth, because that is a long-term cost that we have to deal with. But it is something that, we're not necessarily paying for it, today per se, but it is something that we have to bake in as we pay for each of these departments' positions. And also for those special fund positions, the question is, why are we not outsourcing it, right? So that would be another question to ask, with our departments at a later time. Thank you.
I have a comment for Mayor Pro Tem. I'm looking at the request for the IT. For example, we're not using general fund at all for the IT department.
Yes,
correct?
yes. I believe based on the discussion we've been having for a while, I believe this request will be very effective for the city as well, and for IT and for police department.
And that will not impact our budget at all.
Yes, at this time, it won't impact the general fund. It won't change the proposed amount that I already showed at this time.
Right. So, for example, that particular item, I wouldn't have a problem with approving this item, since it's not going to affect our projected annual operating budget. I was looking at the rest. Most of them are broken down, general funds and then other funds. Is there another one that I'm missing that it's not funded at all by general fund? You see everything else
I also want to bring your attention with the finance department's request and propose and you will see about $23,000 savings there.
Right.
That already factor into the general fund proposed because of the saving. And if we don't do that, then I have to revise the proposed budget a little bit.
Right, and I was going to get to that one as well.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at the public works also, the maintenance worker one, the three that you're requesting. That's not coming out of general fund either, correct?
Correct.
So I wouldn't have a problem with these either, except I would want to wait on the supervisor. I would like more information on that because I do recall when there were two supervisors, and I recall the conversation being that it was just more efficient for everybody to report to one supervisor, so there's not confusion and division from, one supervisor does this area, another supervisor does that area, and my area looks better than yours type of thing. So I would want to revisit the supervisor, but if we could do the maintenance worker, the three positions that you have, since they're not coming out of general funds as well. And let me see which other one.
May I have clarification? And you suggest to approve the maintenance worker three of the maintenance worker one.
Yes,
And then
that's of course.
we also on the second page,
Yes,
the management analyst, except the supervisor position for
the
public work.
management analyst. Let me look at that.
On the second page, there are 2 pages for public works.
Yes, the management analyst, then the finance and the IT, since they're not coming out of, well, finance, we're actually saving money on that. IT,
Yes.
We're not using general funds, we're using special funds. That would be, unless my colleagues have other comments, I would like to motion to approve those areas for now until we get the rest of the numbers from Enrique to see where we're at, so then we can look at the other areas.
I have a question before we do that, and
Yes.
that's exactly what I was asking earlier about the special revenue funds, and I just want to make sure that so any of these items don't impact the general fund. Rose?
No, not at this time.
Not in this year. Okay. And I would say in support of Councilmember Hernandez, I guess, recommendation, having the CSO, I think that is a great priority for us. It will provide relief for other patrol officers so that they can focus on more pressing items. And we certainly have very pressing items happening in the community as we know over the last week. So if there is a way, forward that doesn't put us in a deficit, then I would be willing to consider the CSO plus the items that are restricted or special funded and don't have an impact on the general fund at this time. I think I would also like to know, though, Rose, what's the long-term impact? Are we talking about like pension costs, or what are we talking about?
If we are hiring or add new position, that there will be a future long-term impact from the CalPERS.
Mm-hmm. So maybe what we can do, Councilmember Avila, do you want to have the item returned? Because I agree with you that if we have the funding currently, we should absolutely consider these requests. I would like to know what are the long-term costs, so that we're more informed on that. But I agree that I support, your thinking on moving forward with those items. I just want to understand what are the long-term costs associated, just so that we're more informed. And then I support Councilmember Hernandez's request of the CSO, the one CSO, because it is a priority. And then to bring back the other items and help us understand how those would be funded.
Councilmember Avila, can you just repeat? Sorry. Our CEO and I were having a sidebar when you mentioned that. So I think just for our clarification.
Okay. So, and also based on what Councilmember Garcia said right now too. So what I had requested is to fund anything that is not coming out of the general fund, like the IT, finance that we're actually saving money, and also community, public works, where we're going to look at the maintenance, the 3 maintenance workers and the analysts. But now Councilmember Garcia would like to know what the long-term effect would be with the budgeting because of the retirement and all the benefits that they get. So would it be beneficial so that we make a decision all at once we have those numbers together? Let's have those numbers back to see what the long-term cost is if we were to hire the maintenance workers with the analysts. And then once we have those numbers back, we can just make a decision all at once with all the items, including what Councilmember Hernandez had said. And it gives them time to look into the budgeting that I requested from Enrique, as well as the budgeting that the chief may be looking at. So we can bring it back with those numbers.
There is also one position, part-time position, not impact the general fund. That is the financial analyst part-time position for housing.
Community development? So let's bring all that back with what the cost of the long term with benefits is.
For the public works position,
The public works, and then because the analyst is not being funded from general funds either, right?
it's a part-time position, so it won't impact the future CalPERS costs.
Okay, so let me clarify. So the idea here is to approve everything that's not coming from general fund. However, before we do that, would like clarification on how much it would cost in the long term with benefits. So if you can have those numbers. In the meantime, Enrique looks into the funding from the billboards, see, because that's for sure money. And the chief can look into the funding also that Councilmember Hernandez requested. And that way we have those numbers with us once we do vote on everything. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please.
I will do that. I will do the homework.
Okay, is everybody okay with that?
So when would this be brought back?
When it would be brought back, is that what you asked?
Yeah, because there's crucial positions that I would like to approve as well, but obviously we can't approve everything because we're going to be facing a deficit. So when are we going to look into these revenues and when are we going to address these positions? Because I think we've been kicking the can up the curb long enough, and we really need to address the seriousness of these positions.
I wouldn't mind having a special meeting just to address this so we can have those numbers. The sooner, the better.
So
looking at, so the default that we had in mind was that you would approve the balanced budget with the 70,000 surplus as presented, because that has to be approved before the end of the fiscal year or prior to the start of the next fiscal year. If we can come back, and we should be able to, either in the first meeting in July, which is July 5th, or the second meeting in July, we would have all that information for you. So it's fairly quickly, but it's not prior to the end of the fiscal year or the start of the fiscal year. You would approve a balanced budget today with a surplus, and then soon like I said, no later than any of the 2 meetings in July, we would come back with all the information.
Preferably the first week in July.
Yeah, because of the holiday, July 4th, but, I'm just saying.
Or sooner if possible.
What's that?
If sooner if possible.
Yeah, we
the
would
holiday.
bring it back in the first meeting then.
May I bring them back on the second meeting of the July?
I was
Because-
angling for that, Rose, but,
Thank you. Because I am also very busy working on finalize the citywide annual budget. We have to finish that before the end of June. If I can bring all of those information back by the second meeting in July,
If
Thank
that
you.
information will bring us a better idea, and then we can better allocate money to some of the other areas, and it's more beneficial, then I would be okay with that. I just want to make sure that we have the numbers right, and hopefully be able to add other positions that are necessary.
So why don't we just move everything over until the July 20th meeting and address all of the positions at that point in time,
Right.
and move over whatever is from special revenue and whatever is going to come out of the general fund, move those forward. That way we have anticipated revenue that will be coming in, and we can have a better realistic idea of what positions that will be funded from the general fund can move forward.
Right. When do we have to approve this budget by, Rose?
we have to approve, by municipal code, we shall approve the budget by July 1st.
So we would need to approve it.
You could
Today.
do that today.
We can approve it today and then come back with those
Yes.
balances
It'll be
that we
an amended
requested,
budget.
and we'll
Yeah.
amend it.
Can always amend
Yes.
this budget. I want to mention one thing. It will be a little bit awkward for me since I am from finance department.
Okay.
Because before, when I was preparing the budget, and I expecting my come up, I mean, with the rising cost of everything, that we might facing some deficit. But thank for all the department head working together to reduce some not urgent costs, that we are happy to bring you back the balanced budget. However, in that budget, I included the reduction or cost saving of my department's proposed, that freeze 2 part-time position and eliminate the finance clerk position to reclassify that position to assistant position. That's including in the budget. If you prove that budget, balanced budget with surplus.
You'll have 11 months to make up for it,
Yes.
Rose. So you can wait until July 20th.
Oh, okay.
So if we're clear, I would like to make, unless anybody else has any more comments, make a motion to approve the proposed budget and then come back the second meeting in July, once we have better idea of the other funds, to amend it with the changes.
Second.
And then if I can just add, Councilmember Avila, that each department head come back with the most critical positions that we should approve, whether it's special revenue or from the general fund, and let us know why it would be imperative, other than, I know it's on here now, but I think it would be wise to hear it from them directly as to why it's imperative to hire that position. Because I know there's going to be some that are going to be impacted by the general fund that need to be included within this budget. So if they can bring that on the second meeting of July as well.
Great.
And I just got clarification actually from our attorney. So our balanced budget that we have in front of us, that already includes the finance, correct?
Yeah,
So-
the reduction.
The reduction. So we would approve the balanced budget, including the finance request with a reduction of 23,085. That would be my motion.
I mean, we can. I don't want to parcel approvals here. We have a $78,000 surplus. If what is the anticipated savings is within that, then I say we do that, because this is exactly what you did not want to do, to parcel an approval here and approval there, and that's exactly what we're doing now. So I would rather just where we come back on the 20th and you look at all the positions, including yours, Rose.
I agree.
Okay.
That's why I want to point it out. And if that's the case, then I just go back to make a adjustment or kind of park it there for now. But I just want to bring that out to everybody's attention, what's in that proposed budget. And I absolutely agree with you that I'm not going to make any movement for that position. I wait until July 20, even though it provides savings there.
Okay.
We can always amend it later.
Well,
But I just want to point it out so it's out there.
So you will approve it, but then we'll immediately freeze it, okay?
So that amount is not the actual amount we're approving because it includes that 20.
Yes, so in effect, by approving the percentage budget, you're approving the position.
Exactly.
But then we will freeze it,
Correct.
Okay.
okay?
Until mid-July or whatever. Great.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. We
Okay.
freeze it for now until July 20. Yes.
Okay, so then the motion is to approve the proposed budget and freeze that finance position
Temporary.
temporarily until we get the rest of the information.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
City Clerk, roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Avila,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Monica Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daniel Damian,
Yes.
Mayor Emanuel Estrada.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you for that. So, I will move to adjourn the special meeting, and we'll see you all back at 7.
Thank you, everybody.